Hey guys, this is John with CheatSheetPros.com. Today we're going to go ahead and take a look at the NBA cheat sheet for 2021 to use for daily fantasy sports and or sports betting. So when you see this sheet, it may look a little bit different. We're constantly adding things, tweaking things. The premium group we have on Facebook with our chat, I usually post stuff in there to say, hey, do you guys like this? Do you want to see it? Is it helpful? Is it not helpful? Because these sheets are made by you and what you guys like. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at this. So right here, you can see our tabs down here at the bottom. We've got our bet tab, our tiers tab, our grade tab, the DVP zone, and then the main tab. We're going to go ahead and start off here with the main tab. So everything is pretty self-explanatory. You know, we've got our player, we've got our DK FanDuel positions, team opponent, we have our Vegas numbers here, team total, spread, Vegas total. We have our GPP algo, which typically I usually sort this for you when you open the sheet. And then we've got the projected minutes versus the last 3 minutes. The reason I moved this over here, it's on another part of this sheet, but here in the projections, and we've also got ownership percentages this year, you can see our DraftKings and FanDuel projections. I kept looking at the guys who were projected well, but I kept wanting to know, well, how many minutes are they playing? What are they looking at? So I drug over here and added projected minutes, last 3, so I can see if there is a big change. For example, this guy, I can see here, he's almost min price, but he's only averaging 18 minutes, but for some reason, they're suddenly going to give him 26 minutes tonight. So this, to me, is risky. If he does get the 26 minutes, he'll likely do well, which you can see he's projected at almost 8x at 2% ownership. But I've also seen those guys end up with 12 minutes and not get there. So just something I want to keep in mind. And then when we slide over here, I used to have a player tracker tab that a lot of you have probably seen. And basically what I would do is each day I would pull the final fantasy points for every player into Excel, put them all on separate tabs for separate days, and show them out on one big one. Well, I still do that, but I just put it in a different form and I import it into our main sheet this year. So you can see this is the last 10 days of games, starting with the most recent day. So yesterday's -1, and then it goes down for the last 10. And if you guys like, I can extend this out 10, 12, 15 days, whatever you guys want to see. Now, looking at numbers, if they're just like this, like raw numbers, drives me nuts. So I know this looks a little bit like a rainbow, but I color-coded it. So you can see based on their current salary today, these past performances, if it's over 6x, it's red. If it's 5x to 6x, it's green. And then when we get below that, we drop to a light yellow. And then if it's less than, I think, 4 or 4.5x, it's blue. So you can see red, green, good. Everything else is cool or cold. And you can kind of glance here and see how they've been doing, which this is Jokic here. You can see he's dropped 72.5 last night, and then he had a 51-point game and then 76.8. So he's got 2 70-point games in his first 3 games. So that's phenomenal. Also, some of the other stuff I like to see is the last 5 average, and then what that is based on their salary today. You know, is it over the 5x or 6x or whatever number you're looking at? And then the last 10 ceiling. The reason I use the last 10 ceiling is if we're 3 months into the season and a guy, the first game of the season, had a monster game, it's going to show his ceiling as that game on every site the rest of the year. I don't care about that. I want to know in the last 10 games, what's the best they've done. I want something that's like a revolving door to where if they have a good game and then 20 crap games, it's not going to show up as a good GPP play. But if it's someone who every 10 games they're hitting that massive game, then they're going to show up here. And then basically this is just the value based on their salary, what their ceiling is. And we use that for some later calculations. Over here, if you just want a quick look at players, I've got the projected points, projected minutes, and their fantasy point per minute production, and then you can compare it in the column right next to them is their last 5 average, so you can see the change. Is it a significant change? Are they producing at that level? Is it something they're suddenly projected more minutes, or have they been playing that many minutes? Are they projected for more points or less points than what they've been averaging, etc., etc. Then we've got our famous DVP section, which you see everywhere. And so this is fantasy points allowed to that position. Now, there's only 3 or 4 games for most teams so far this year, so take it with a grain of salt until we get 10 to 12 under our belt. But you can see points allowed to their primary position, and then the total fantasy points allowed by the opponent. And then a lot of sites don't have this, so I brought it in here, and I just broke it down into a percentage. And if you followed us last year when we wrote our articles and we did our videos, if we get a player that's between 22, 23, up to 24%, then those really become a smash spot. Again, with a couple of games, I'm not worried about it, but you can see here, this one at 29 is one that I would look at, and so it's Westbrook. And then everybody's always digging in on minutes. So here we have the projected minutes, and you can see their average over their last 3, 5, 10 games, and then each individual minute over their last 5 games. So if you really want to dig in the minutes, you can figure out what they're playing, what they've been playing, and what they're averaging. So how do you use this main tab to find plays? The first thing you do is sort by GPP algo. Just click this, sort largest to smallest, and then look in these top 20, 25 players and pick you some core plays to build around. This is going to kind of point you in the direction to get you some of the better plays. The GPP algo is a mix of their projection, their recent value, how they've been doing, DVP, the game total, the spread. It's kind of a mix of everything, and it's just kind of like a grading scale. It runs up to right around 100. Usually anything above 80, 85 is good. And then you can look individually and see what games they've done well in, ownership, all that good stuff. Other things you can do, if you've got a player, let's say you put a lineup together and you have $6,000 of salary left, you can come over here, you can sort by salary, and you can come down here to 6K, which is going to be in this range, and then you can compare all of these guys, you know, how they've done recent games. You can even come over here, look at their DVP. You can come over here, how many minutes are they projected to play, and help fill that lineup. So let me flip this back. So this is our main tab. As of December 29th, 2020, this is what it looks like. Now, it may change a little bit when you see it. We always add stuff. The next tab we have down here is the DVP zone. And so let me shrink this down a little bit. So the DVP zone, we're going to pull the last 10 games, and we're going to look at each team, what they're allowing to each position. So this part is just like it was last year. You can see we've got the team. Now the team over here, it's what they're allowing. So Washington is allowing 235 total fantasy points and this many to each position. So then you would look for a player in the opponent to accumulate or attack these stats, if that makes sense. And then I usually sort this by team implied total, high to low for you. And if you click this little box here and just click clear, it'll bring up every team. You can see that's a lot of information. So the people in the chat, I said, do you want to see only the games for today or everybody? And they preferred to only see games for today. So I just have it default to no game, and I pull it in here. So these are all of the games for today. And you can even come in here and sort this by total fantasy points allowed and find out the 3 games. You can look at the spots and say, okay, Indy guards might be sneaky. You know, they're giving up 60 and 67 points to guards and not a lot else to the big guys. And then go from there. This is the percentage that we talked about on the main tab. So you can see here, like they're giving up 271 total fantasy points compared to Phoenix, who's only giving up 198. Well, this 60, that makes up 22%. So sometimes you can look at the point number or you could look at the percentage number. And like here, we see Washington can attack Chicago. Point guard positions, they're giving up 75.9, which is 29%. Again, it's only a few games, so that number is skewed high, but something to look at. So Westbrook may be a killer play tonight. These are new that I added in our premium chat on Facebook. I always pop in there and I show people a screenshot. I say, hey, do you like this? Is it helpful? Do we want to add it? Do we not want to add it? And they thought it would be helpful, so we put it in here. So this is the actual real-life points allowed for each position, the field goal percentage allowed, and the rebounds allowed to each position. So you can see it's in the same order, but instead of just looking at the fantasy points, you can see the real-life points that are allowed, and then the field goal percentages for each position, and then the rebounds that are averaged. So you can see, is the center getting a bunch of rebounds? Here, the point guards are getting a bunch of rebounds. Here might be a smash spot for a center. The other team's giving up 16.3 rebounds to the center per game, so that would tell me they're a poor rebounding team, etc. I'm going to flip over here. I'm going to do the grade tab in a minute. So the tiers tab, there's a contest on DraftKings. They call it the tiers. It used to be called Pick'em. And so I thought it'd be fun to make a little sheet for this. So I think the last 2 years we've been doing this. This year it's the same, looks a little different. We have all of our tiers of players. And then we've got standard Vegas numbers, total, game total, spread. We have our algo numbers, so you can look at the tier and then find the guy with the highest algo, and that's probably the guy we would lean to. And then we have our quick look section here. You can see the projected points, projected minutes, fantasy points per minute, and they compare it to the last 5 average. And then just like the main tab, we have the last 10 days of production and fantasy points, so you can look at these guys side by side. So for example, tier 4, you can come over here and see who's been doing well. This will tell you if someone's hot or not. And you can compare these guys side by side so you can pick the best player. Also over here on DVP, I just brought in the fantasy points to their primary position. Also, the amount of rebounds the other team allows to that position, and the field goal percentage. And where that really comes into play, like here you can see this team's allowing a 61% field goal rate to this player's position, and this one only a 32%. So there's a big difference there. So if everything else is the same, then maybe this helps you make a decision on a player. Anyways, this is a fun one to play with. If you play on FanDuel, don't worry about it. The last thing I want to do for fantasy before we look at the betting tab is the grade tab. So the grade tab, this is what I had put up last night. And let me find it here. And get it in the middle of the screen so you guys can see it. So this is, let me blow it up. There we go. So I posted this on Facebook from last night, 12/28/2020. And you can see this is our grade tab. And I just sorted this out by tier 1 and tier 2 plays. These are all the guys that came up. And you can see how they did. Sorry. So we had Jokic put up 72 points at 9,800. So he went 7x. Harden, he ended up about 5x. Nothing great. Dort, he was a big conversation in our chat. At 4,300, he put up 35 points. That's a massive X value. Grant put up over 6x at 39. Kyle Anderson put up over 8x. Bogdanovich, another 8x or 7x guy. But you can see these guys, look at their prices, 51, 47, 46, 42, and they're putting up 40, 35, 33, and 40 points. So it's not just, hey, play James Harden, he's a good player, which I hate it when people write that up. But you can see we've got some big players up here. We had Harden and Jokic in good spots as tier core plays. And then we had some good fill-ins or pump plays with Dort, Anderson, Bogdanovich, DeLon Wright, Josh Jackson, Jeremy Grant. And these guys were all between 4,000 and 5,000 with the exception of Grant, who was 59. And they all did really well. So this is a good place to find core plays to build around. So let me close this out. So this is the grade tab, and it's pretty much got a lot of the same stats you see on the main tab, but we wanted to shrink it down if someone wants a more condensed version. We have the Vegas calculations up here. We have our tier tab, minutes, projected versus last 5, any changes, projections, salary, last 5 average, last 5 average value on their current salary, last 10 ceiling, fantasy points per minute over the year, over the last 5, percentage change. And then we have the last 10 ceiling and the DVP broken down into a fantasy point per minute number that we use for a projection calculation. The labels were still pending. We have the primary position they play, DK FanDuel positions, DVP to that position, your standard Vegas numbers, and then over here we have this projection testing, which lots of times I'll go over here and I'll copy all the names, and then I come over here and I copy the projections and values, and I'll upload them into an optimizer, run some lineups, see if I like it, lock in a few, change the exposure, play with it a little bit. So if I don't have a lot of time, these projections over here are kind of what I'm tinkering with. So how do you use this sheet? to find fantasy players? Well, there's a couple ways. One, you can come over here to value and sort it high to low and start looking through the players and see these are usually going to be the players that have been doing really well and have a decent DVP spot. The other thing you can do is come here, like when I posted that screenshot, I went in here, let me show you again. So this little drop down, if you're new to Excel, click that, and all these are selected. When you click this select all, it unselects all of them, and click tier 1, tier 2, OK. Now I'm going to go ahead and sort this. Now this is going to show you all the tier 1 core players and tier 2 players that you can look to build around. This is where I recommend picking 3, 4, 5 core guys and then mix and match and build around them. And you can see if we sort over here by salary, we've got guys in the upper end, and then we get down even in this lower end. So it's not just, okay, Jokic and Westbrook, build around them, blah, blah, blah. We got some big guys that we like. It's going to show you some mid-range guys that we like, and it's going to show you some low-end guys. So I have some people that will come in here and take these bottom 3 guys and say, okay, I'm going to lock them in and run lineups, mix match everybody else, go from there. But I recommend at least looking at it a little bit and seeing what you like. Which you can see over here, Jokic, Westbrook, they've been doing really well. Drummond's in a good spot tonight. And then you can kind of go on down the list. I also like to compare the minutes to see, you know, are they projected over 30 minutes? Are they playing over 30 minutes? I don't like the guys that are playing 15 minutes and suddenly they're projected for 30. Those guys are risky because sometimes they might not necessarily get those minutes. And then you can come in here and then let's say our tier 3 players. These are players we like them if they get the minutes. So these are guys that if you look here, they're projected for an increase in minutes. I think it's 5 or more, but they're not averaging very many minutes. You can see here he's playing 8 minutes, but suddenly tonight he's going to get 23. I see a lot of these players in with like 12 minutes and miss value, so it's about 50-50. And you can see here that there's a big change. So this is why they drop into tier 3 for us. So look at it. If you think they're going to get the minutes, like if someone is out and they are going to play that position, yes, they're going to get the minutes. If they're in a rotation, no, they may not get those minutes. And then we go down here to tier 4. And these are, oh, dang it did this again. Hang on. So for some reason, my RAM gets clogged up. And when it does that, I got to close it, open it real quick, let it update. All right, so these are our tier 4 plays. And these are, I just call them lineup fillers. They're guys that are going to be pretty solid in minutes. They're going to have good recent value. They're going to have a decent fantasy point per minute production, but maybe their DVP is not the best. Basically, they're hitting a lot of categories, but not all of them to be a tier 1 or a tier 2 player. And then when you come out here, you got these other ones like DVP red flag, GPP dart, ice cold, minute risk, poor production, and risky. And you can see these are ice cold is blue. These guys are running less than 4.5x and down. DVP red flag, that means there's a issue with the DVP for that position the player is playing. But again, 3 games, don't look at it. We got poor production. So this guy's averaging 3.6x value, which isn't very good. GPP dart, it means they're good, but they just really haven't done it yet. Minutes risk, these are guys that are playing less than 24 minutes, usually somewhere between that 18 and 24 range. Or there's not a significant change in minutes, they just don't get a lot of minutes, so to speak. So let me go ahead and clear this out. So this is our grade tab, and again, there's no right or wrong way to use this sheet. Everybody does it different. I talked to several different people about what they like, what they don't like, what they want to see, and I'm amazed at how many different people are like, oh, I go to the grade tab and I look at the projections, or I only use tier 1, tier 2 core plays, or I go to the main tab and I use the projected plays or the DVP plays. And I mean, there's just several different ways you can do it. And as we do videos, once the season gets on, we'll show that to you. And then let me see, we've done the main, the DVP, the grade tab, the tiers tab, and the bet tab. So if you only play fantasy, then there's no reason to watch this portion of the video. If you also do sports betting, then this is the portion of the video that you want to watch. So this is our bet tab. And what I did is I combined 2 tabs from last year and kind of put it into one. So to give you a quick overview of the tab, how to use this is over here. These are the teams. So just like a scoreboard, the bottom team is always home. When you click into this box, a drop down will appear. So you click here and this little, I don't even know what you call, caret is going to appear, and it's going to give you a drop down menu to pick your game. This is going to show your Vegas numbers. These auto update every time you open up the sheet. So if you open up a sheet from yesterday, it's going to error out because it's going to pull today's games and yesterday's stats. So it's going to look crazy. So I post the sheet once in the morning. I say before lunch. I try to get it up by 9:30 in the morning. And I update it again an hour to an hour and a half before lock. And I post it in our Facebook group and on our website. And that's for our premium members. Our free Facebook group, which I'll put the link in the description. I post it on there usually Thursdays for free for everybody to play with, try it out, see if you like it, see if it's something you'd want to use every day and possibly become a member with us. But anyways, when you open it, these auto update. You can see what it opened at, any movement, total movement, and then percentage of money where it's at. These are our models, which we'll go over in detail in a minute. These are just random stats that we'll go over. And these are the Vegas numbers. So you can see this is the record overall, home, away, last 10, streak. We've also got the Vegas stats for percentage of over games, percentage of under games, percentage they covered the spread or record against the spread, and then the cover percentage. And then scoring margins for the last 3 games, home, road, which down the road, these will look better. These down here are some of the stats that we pull from. I think I scrape, probably 60 of these tables, but I only bring 8 up here to take a look at because these are the most popular ones that people are going to want to see. And it's points per game, points allowed per game, and then broken down to an efficiency number. And then we got the EPR, opponent EPR. We got the pace, which is possessions per game, and turnovers per game. So these are some of the stats that we'll get to in a minute. These are our Vegas notifications. Your Vegas notifications, we're still working on the tier plays for this year. I got to check the numbers, but it's going to tell you if our model likes the over, the under. It's going to tell you if 80% of the bets are on a side or a total. So here you can see 80+% of the bets are on Cleveland and 80+% are on the over, which you can see Cleveland's got 89 and 88 on the over. That was 95, so that's came down a little bit. And then if it's a big pace-up game, it's going to pop up somewhere down here as well. So on our models, so these are what we're always tinkering with and looking at. So the first thing I want to talk about is just projected pace. There is several different ways you can calculate this. So I have one calculation that I've been using for a while. It's a projected pace. I can't tell you exactly what it is because I would have to look at it. It's some calculation I came up with last year. I had success with it, so I left it on there. The average pace, that's basically just taking the average for both teams and dividing it out, and that gives you a rough ballpark pace of that game. However, where that is inaccurate is if you have 2 teams with a high number of possessions. If you average them, then you're just going to get a high average, but it doesn't account for the escalation of possessions by having 2 teams that are both rated high. So we have this, it says a roto projection pace. So this is a rough calculation. There was a guy with Roto Grinders. He wrote an article, and it was saying that if you take the average number of possessions for the league, and then you take Team A and Team B, you subtract the average, and then you add both of those back to the average, that will give you the correct projected pace. The reason that does not work is because that puts every game around 240 to 250 points, which is astronomical. None of those games are even close. So when I went back and looked at the average, so possession average last year was like 90, was it 97.5, 98.5 possessions per game. Then this year, after 3 games, it was like 100.1 or 100.5, and now it's up to like 103, 103.5. So this is the number I tinker with, but 103.5 is what I'm going to use. 98 was too low, 100 was too low, 101, missed a lot of the times. 103.5 started getting us really close to that ballpark. So 103.5 is what I'm using for our average mean. And when I use this projected roto pace, what it's doing is if you have two teams that have a pace above that, it's going to subtract it and it's going to calculate a new one, which you can see it's pretty close to this projected pace. And I'm just listing all of these out here. That way, if you guys ever do your own modeling or stats, you can look at this and you can see the three different paces it's generating based on the stats, and maybe you want to use a different one. So this is what I found. So this stat model here, this projected score runs right off of this box here. And for this afternoon, I highlighted it in white so you could see it. I put some space in there to make it easier to read. If you open up ESPN or the Sportacular app on your phone, this is exactly what it's going to look like when the game's going on and over. It's going to show you each team's number of field goals, the percentage, the three-point attempts, the percentage, the free throw attempts, percentage. It's going to show you total rebounds, offensive rebounds, steals, blocks, and turnovers. So it reads just like that sheet would. Basically what I've done is using the last three games, I pull in an average of, field goal attempts for each team, allowed for the team, average it out, and I come up with a number of points here for two-pointers, the number of points of three-pointers, the number of points based on field goals, and down here it calculates this 123 to 108 total, which you can see over here. So this is your stat model. It's just these last three games. And so that one's kind of a good baseline to do based on an average. So that gives us one model that gives us a number to kind of take a look at. Also over here, you can see if there's an advantage that's significant, it's going to highlight in yellow. So here you can see Cleveland's taking a lot more field goal attempts, 8 more per game. They're averaging almost twice as many steals per game. And then they've got an advantage in the accumulating stats over here. Then we've got the ranks. So you can see how a team ranks in these certain stats. So here you can see the Knicks in field goal attempts, they rank 26th. But they're second in three-point shooting percentage. Cleveland is also really good in three-point shooting percentage, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a little hard to look at in the beginning, but once you get down, you can really glance at this and get a good idea of how the game is going to go. One of the things that I'll see is like one team shooting 60% from three-point land and shooting 10 more threes a game. That's a team, if they get hot, they're going to blow them out and it's going to go over. You'll see another team that just shoots terrible from three-point land. Also, same thing, good free throw shooting teams will rack up a lot of points towards the end of the game, especially if it's close. And then also if you get a team that's heavy rebounding versus a team that can't rebound. So anyways, to wrap up, these three games, this is the stat model. Now this projected score model, this is similar to what I have on the NCAA hoop sheet, the power of 72, or I can't remember what I call the total of 72. So it's basically using that, but 72 is kind of the magic number I found in hoops to generate possessions per game, to generate projected scores, totals, and it's been working really well. So I have that same theory here, except for I'm using this with this projected roto pace of 112. So you can see the two teams here are at 103, 111 over the last three, but it's generating a 112 pace, 107 if we do average. So roughly, we're plus or minus about 5 possessions in this game, but it's going to generate a score for us, which is going to be a little higher than this one. This one, I tend to see it's a little low. This one is usually pretty close, sometimes a little high, but this one also has Cleveland winning, and this is going to use a lot of the offensive efficiencies. One of the big things I can see over the last 3 games here is Cleveland has a better offensive efficiency, about 4 points per 100, and then defensively they are significantly better. So they're allowing 109 per 100 possessions, and they're only allowing 0.97, so 97 points per 100 possessions. Oh, sorry, getting thirsty. And then I have an extreme model here, which this one is a little bit skewed, but you've got to have something wacky in there to find the skewed model. So basically what this one doing, this is calculating it out, but it's taking this projected pace up here, and then it's using, and I'd have to look it up. It's not that I'm not telling you, I just can't remember off the top of my head because it's from last year. But it's taking the blocks and steals advantage and the rebounding advantage. It takes a certain percentage of each and it adds it to something else, and then it manipulates the possessions and moves them up to show the advantage. So here on an extreme model, you can see we've got Cleveland 127, 106. So we're still coming pretty close with the total of 231, 238, 233. But what I found is if you use this model here, just using these stats, this model is completely different using the offensive efficiencies and this roto projected pace. And then you take this extreme model who's going to put a heavy factor into teams that are great in blocks, steals, and rebounding. And then if you just average these three out, you come over here, you get this average. This is actually pretty darn accurate, and it's something that I follow quite a bit. So quickly, when I open up this sheet, I will glance at these three and see what I have for the totals, look at the average, and see what I have the team winning by, and this average is going to generate these plays over here. So for example, tonight on December 29th, I've got Cleveland open at 3.5. They're -3. They've got a large percentage of the money. I've got them winning by 15, by 7, by 21. Now, when I say by 21, take that with a grain of salt. With 3 games, numbers are heavily skewed. So I'm really not looking at the 21. But if I average all 3 of these out, I feel pretty comfortable with saying, okay, they're going to win and cover 3. So that's one thing we can look at tonight. See if on December 29th, Cleveland beats the Knicks by 3. And then if we want to look at other games, we can come in here. Let's look at this one here. So we got Cleveland and Washington, or sorry, Chicago and Washington. And then you can see our model here. We've got 225, 245, 239. So we have an average of about 236 total. Well, that's pretty much right on with Vegas. They're at 235, open 235. It's at 237.5 now. 97% of the money's on the over. So you can see our models, if you average them out, we're kind of right in that ballpark. Spread of 6.5, we got it as a 3-point game. That's not enough to skew me to a side each way. And I think the total's this is probably gonna be one of those games where it's you can see here this huge pace up game where this could be 135 to 130. Now one of the things that jumped out here, if you look down here, I don't even know if you can see that down here. So if you take the season and the last 3 possessions per game, which they're the same right now because most teams have only played 3 games or less, and you average those out, I just put a quick number here because what I'm following is I want to see if both of these are over 105, that's when it's going to generate this possible huge pace up game. And this is where you can see a lot of points total up really quick. Now the average we're calculating for this is this 103.5, but to get this huge pace-up game, both teams have to be over 105, and that's something that you see a ton of points scored. So I'm real curious to see how this game ends up tonight, but again, this bet tab I constantly tweak. I look at it every day. The first thing I do when I get up in the morning before I update the sheet, I pull up the ESPN scoreboard, I go back and I go through every single game, and I look at all these stats, the rebounding, the field goals, the percentages, everything on there, and I say, what worked, what didn't work, what hit, what didn't hit. Does one of these models jump out on a consistent basis? Is the average doing the best? And that's something we consistently talk about in the chat when we get into the season. But anyways, this is the NBA 2021 cheat sheet that we have to start the season. There's another tab I'm possibly working on for prop bets, and then another one to just pull an individual game and all the positions, but we'll go over that in a different video. But right now, you can join our free Facebook group at facebook.com/group/Hayes Sheets, and that's spelled HAZESHEETS, and I'll put it in the description of the video. And then we do have a premium group where you can sign up on the website. It's probably one of the cheapest things you will find. It's $13 a month, or I think $35 for 3 months, and you get all these sheets for all sports every day. I don't like the sites that are like, oh, you got to pay so much for sports betting, you got to pay so much for basketball, you got to pay another fee to get football, and it's just ridiculous. Mine's just one price, it's everything. And I post them daily. I spend a lot of time on them, so I hope you guys like them. And I hope to see you soon. Have a good one, guys, and good luck.